to our next episode of the Hormone Cafe. I'm really passionate here at Vera about mental health, and so we're so excited to have Kelly with us. She is a licensed professional counselor, and she also specializes in perinatal mental health. And I really wanted to talk with her about how your mental health changes during your period, because I think that's just something really unique to women that men they don't understand at all. And sometimes we do just want to power through and that kind of thing and not necessarily sync with our cycles and maybe what we would be experiencing in our bodies. So things that we wanted to talk about today, for example, are hormone changes and mental health kind of in general, and then specifically conversations with partners and friends. How do we talk about how we're feeling at certain times of our cycle? And then what are some of our expectations about really specific mood patterns during our cycle, and what's normal, what's not normal? How do we think about mentally prepare for that and cope with some of those changes that we just experience as women every single month? So I think one thing that is kind of, we talked about this earlier, but when you talk to your friends and, people obviously experience all kind of different things. And guys are obviously completely different. Like they don't really understand so when you think about, okay, your mood changes throughout your cycle, how do you kind of talk to other people about that?
I think that there's talking to our girlfriends and then talking to our husbands or our partners or spouses, right? Because I think when we talk to our girlfriends, it's funny, as soon as someone opens up the conversation, everyone jumps in, right? Typically our girlfriends are not I don't want to hear about that. I don't want to hear about your period, right? They're like, oh, me too. Yes, I get that. I'm right there with you, right? Yeah. So sometimes it's just being the first person to start the conversation of I'm on my period right now. I'm too tired. I don't want to go. And everyone's like, all right, cool. Thank goodness someone said it, because me too. Right? Or there's an understanding and we can start the conversation. I think with partners or spouses or husbands, right, it's different because they don't understand, right? They work on a 24-hour clock and we work on a 28-day clock. It's a very different. And the emotional ups and downs with what's happening biologically, also very different. So there's just not going to be the same level of understanding, right? They're not going to jump on board with you and be like, oh, hallelujah, sister. Thank goodness you said something. Right? So I think that it's figuring out how to explain it to our partners in a way that, one, they understand or can conceptualize or grasp or grab onto, right? And two, their level of squeamishness around the conversation, right? There are some people that are just yeah, tell me all the details. I want to learn. I want to know. And then there are some that are nope, let's preserve the intimacy in our relationship. I don't want to know about that. My husband falls more on that side than on the other side. So ways that I've talked to him, right, are this is the wrong week of the month for you to be joking with me. I am not going to be the butt of the joke because I will take it personally, right? And so I'm not telling him I'm going to start my period in 2 days and you need to be nice to me, but there's an understanding of there are different times of the month that I'm going to feel differently about the same things, right? We can talk about this. You can make this joke in, 8 days from now, and it'll be really funny. And we'll laugh about it, and it'll be fine. If you do it today, I'm going to cry and not talk to you all night. That's just the reality of that. And figuring out just how to have that conversation in a way that our partners can grasp and they can take it to heart and realize that there's nothing wrong with it, that we just, as women, this is the wave we ride every 28 days and it just looks different week to week, and that's okay. And then once we can have that conversation, we can capitalize on that, right? Of when we're ovulating, we feel more frisky or romantic, and we can use that to our advantage, right? And when we're in our luteal phase before we start our period, we're usually a little bit more irritable, right? That's the week where you don't make the joke about me because I'm going to get mad at it, right? And when we're on our periods, we're usually more tired, and we can have more downtime and schedule things that are just more quiet and more soft, right? And then everybody wins, right? Because we feel better because we're more in alignment of where we're at naturally. Our partners feel better because we're not pushing outside of our comfort zone all the time, or outside of that space where that actually feels good to us at any given moment. And they learn a little bit too, right? It becomes predictable to everybody, not just predictable to us, which can be a really positive and helpful thing, I think, in relationships.
Yeah, I think for my husband, I need to tell him almost what I need from him because he's a fixer. He wants to like fix it.
Yep.
And then I say, okay, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to leave me alone so I can go to bed at 9 o'clock on my period instead of like it's expecting that we're gonna talk and be on until 10:30.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Because he's like a doer. He wants to do something. Just like, you don't need to do anything. You just need to leave me alone.
Yeah. Which I think is a great point, right? That so many men are doers and they are fixers and they do want to have something concrete to go off of. Is like, I know that this is going to be helpful. You know, and a lot of times, like, men subconsciously, right? It's like, if I don't know if it's going to be helpful, I'm just not going to do anything at all. And then I'm
That's a good
stuck
point,
in this place of like, do I do nothing or do I do the wrong thing? What's the right thing, right? And so if we can give them examples of like, let me go to bed at 9 o'clock. I don't want to talk tonight, right? And even kind of giving our partners just heads up throughout the day, right? Of like, I'm tired tonight. Like, I just want to watch Friends or something stupid that has like no weight to it, and then go to bed early, right? And just kind of giving them that heads up of like, this is what I need right now. Right? Or let's plan something. Like, I have a lot of energy. Let's go out to dinner tonight. Or like, let's meet so-and-so for drinks. You know, I think that if we give them that heads up and kind of those, a couple more concrete things of this is what feels good, then they know and they can kind of roll with that. And I think that a lot of men, they want to be able to do that. They just want to know what it is to do. And then hopefully, you know, with more openness, more conversation, men can kind of understand the cycle too of, and then there's, you know, like that predictability that we talked about of like, okay, she just got off her period. So like, maybe I'll plan a date night, right? Or we're going to veg and watch TV tonight. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to talk about anything or like have a lot of energy. So it can be really powerful, I think, when we know what we need, that we can communicate that. And then it can be something that we don't need to communicate in the long run, right? But we have to talk about it first. We have to give ourselves and our partners kind of the answer key first, so we understand what's going on, and then we can just kind of, hopefully it just fluidly and naturally just comes into our lives in a way where we don't have to communicate about it all the time, and there's more predictability to it, and there's more ease with figuring out what feels good when.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, if you know yourself, then you got to know a little bit more about how to communicate. Like, okay, my luteal phase, I know that I crave carbs, but I really need protein, and then just outsource that to your husband. Like, you're in charge of making the protein shake for breakfast in the morning. Like, I want to see my protein shake on the counter. Like, all right.
Help me.
Right, exactly. Like, give him a job. What are some of those like mental health expectations throughout the whole month and all the different hormone changes that we're going through?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. The amount of women that come to my office and complain about not feeling motivated the entire month or having weeks they just feel like low or tired, it's almost everybody at some point. And it's so interesting, right? Of like, we can think about women as a population and be like, yeah, we have cycles and we have hormones and they affect us and we get that. But then we think about ourselves personally and be like, well, I should be able to just power through, right? I should be able to just do all the things all the time. Like, if my husband can get up and do it every day, like, why can't I get up and do it every day? Or, you know, why can my friend do it this week and I can't do it, right? And why am I struggling? But the reality is that, like, we have different hormones throughout our cycle, which cause us to feel different ways. They impact the way that we feel, right? So there are going to be some weeks where we have a lot of energy, where we feel way more extroverted, that we're like ready to go out and like tackle the world. And we're just like raring to go. There are going to be weeks where we're like tired and we're just, you know, we're slow and we're a little bit more sluggish. And there are weeks that we're going to feel a little bit more irritable and like we just want to be a little bit more alone and have that more of that isolation feels better, right? So, and that is natural, right? The conversation that I have with women is like, that's the way it's supposed to be. And if we know that, we don't have to guilt ourselves for being hormonally and biologically created to be this way. And we can plan for it, right? We can know that during my luteal phase, right, I'm irritable. So I don't want to be around a ton of people. I don't want to have to, you know, put on a marketing face and schmooze or, you know, whatever it is. we can plan for that, we can predict it, and then we can take care of ourselves within that. And I think that our mental health can suffer when we want to feel like we can do it all the time, and then when we can't, right, then it feels so bad. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that as women, the hormonal fluctuations and changes that we have just impact the way we feel. And there's nothing, it's just a fact, right? There's nothing even like good or bad about it. It just is. And so being able to know that, understand that, and roll with it can create such a feeling of ease, I think, on our mental health, instead of this pressure and this burden and this, sense of like, am I failing at something, that I can't do this, so I don't feel this way all the time, or that I always have this couple days where I crash and like I just want to be in bed, or I'm just tired. I think that's where our mental health suffers the most, is that, the expectation that we should be able to do it one way all the time.
That would be so huge, that we could just do it all the time. Yeah, power through. And there could be other needs, and if we anticipate those needs, we can care for ourselves a little bit better, and don't have to. Maybe those aren't going to be your highest motivation days.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And I think that there's so much too that we can give ourselves on those low motivation days, right? We all want to feel motivated, and we all want to feel energized. And we get that, we just get it for a portion of the month. We don't get it for the entire month. But there are so many things that we can do on the other parts of the month and the other phases of our cycle that are so life-giving too, that we try to we kind of just skip over them, right? Because they feel less important, or they feel like less of a priority, right? But if we actually allow ourselves to rest, holy cow, we feel so much better, right? But a lot of times we just want to power through rest because it doesn't feel productive. Yeah. So I think I just want to do the productive thing, right? Like that's the American way. Just let's be productive all the time. But if we allow ourselves to rest in the phase that we need the rest the most, then the productivity, the motivation is just more when we get to that phase again, right? And there's a lot of there's a lot of sweetness when we're introspective, when we're quieter, when we're more inward. There's a lot of learning about ourselves that we can do then, that we can then use to further ourselves when we have those more extroverted, weeks and days and moments, that we use all of that to just keep us propelling further. But a lot of times we don't place the value on those phases because it can feel like a waste of time because we're not quote unquote doing anything.
It's so true, right?
So I think that too, of knowing that, being able to identify for ourselves what the value is of the, what most women would qualify as like the bad phases of our cycle, right?
Right.
Being able to really hone in on what do I get to give myself during this phase that I wouldn't have the stillness for during the other phases.
That's such a good point.
And then we use that to put them into the other phases of our cycle. And it's like the snowball effect of feeling better and better and more aligned and more in tune with ourselves every cycle.
Like maybe your luteal phase is like your planning phase, or like your yoga stretching phase. Yeah. But if you plan, then you can be super productive at your other phases.
Absolutely. Versus if we have our planning phase, right, and we're just trying to do during that, then we kind of lose out on all this time where we have this hyper focus in on something that's just not external. And it's so valuable if we just let it be what it is.
I love that. And just knowing that that's okay. And even just planning for the different phases. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. Right. Of this is how we were designed, and there is no need to try to change it.
Just lean into it. Yeah. And embrace it instead of just fighting it. I love that. That's amazing.
Yes. Lean into it.
That's beautiful. And you're right. You just have to, it is what it is. You just embrace the things that are unique to us and don't turn them into something negative.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. This is so wonderful.
Yes.
So today we just wanted to go over different hormone changes and how they would affect your mental health just throughout your cycle, and particularly things, how do you talk to your friends about that? How do you talk to your partners about that? And then how do you think, what kind of mindset do you need to be on so that you thrive in the way and really lean into what your body's telling you and what it's trying to do. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Hormone Cafe, and stay tuned for our next episode.